You have such a phenomenal insight into the business, if I may say so, you know, because
Thanks.
you've been doing this for what? I mean, 20 years that I know about.
38.
And it's 38 altogether, right? So,
Yeah.
and
So,
yeah. Yeah, we predate Electronic Arts, which is kind of funny.
yeah. So that means that you've covered like indie development right through the cycle quite a few times, right? From bedroom to mainstream to bedroom develop again, 2D, 3D, then platform changes, multiple platform changes.
Yep.
Sega disappearing, Nintendo emerging, and you've represented developers on all those platforms with all the different types of publishers.
Yep.
All that time.
Yep.
So
7,000 projects.
7,000 projects. I thought, you know, I've got 65 titles under my belt, right? And I see some, you know, some of the.
Yeah, well, it's not like I developed them all personally. You know what I'm saying?
7,000.
Yeah. It's easy, all right? The first thing you have to do is we have to clarify what's an indie, all right? Because different people use the term different ways. To me, an independent studio is any studio that's not owned by a publisher. It doesn't matter whether it's 3 people or 400 people. If it's not owned by, you know, BioWare was an independent studio up until the point that they were bought by Yet. Okay. And so, you know, that's how I use the term indie. Okay. And all I've ever done in my life is represent indies. Now, most of the indies that I represent are not guys coming forward with their first game. I have had my share of those guys over the years. Okay. But most of them are professional studios that have been in the business 5 to 25 years, and they've been putting out good titles. Okay, so there's already an indication that they have the ability to deliver on a title and that they have the ability to do certain things in budget. And you can get some estimation of, you know, what's the Metacritic, what's the quality level of the titles they've done in the past, what's the sales of the titles they've done in the past, okay, to the degree that publishers have shared such things. But, you know, you take all of that to the side, what publishers are looking for always is creativity first, okay? The world is full of mechanics, all right? And the barriers to entry right now are lower than they've ever been. You know, I mean, if you look at, you know, you read in the press, what was it, 1,400 games in 2015 on Steam and over 7,000 games on Steam last year. Okay, that means it's a low barrier to entry. All people were coming with all manner of things, and they're reusing code bases and they're reskinning stuff and they're doing all this, and it makes it really hard to curate the content. Yeah. Okay.
And they're getting it really cheaply in, you know, places like Ukraine and Romania.
Well, you know, I'm not going to disparage anybody for their geographic location because that's part of being competitive too. You know what I mean? But what's the real value of something that's just putting pixels on a screen and totally taking, you know, cloning something else that's already out there?
Yeah.
All right. You know, the industry already has a propensity to be lemmings. Okay. You know, somebody, you know, player unknown goes out, it comes up with a new mechanic, you know, of drop in battle royale. Okay. And all of a sudden everybody and his freaking brother is going to come with battle royale because it's like, oh, there's a blade of grass over here. All the sheep have to run after it and try and chew it down. Okay. Now, nothing will ever be as good as the original if it's just a knockoff of the same thing. Okay. But our industry's built upon people iterating on what's come before.
Yeah.
Okay. So like nobody owns a mechanic. I'm not saying that somebody should own a mechanic. Okay. If people could own a mechanic, then the only people that could make first person shooters would be id Software.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but we've gotten lots of good first person shooters.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what people are looking for is, how do you extend the genre? How do you extend the mechanic? What new elements are you bringing to it that make it more fun, have a stronger compulsion loop, more addictive? What, any of the above that increases user engagement with that, because that means you can develop an audience, even though there's other games like this out there already. Okay? Because there's very few games that come along that aren't like something similar somewhere along the line. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So that's what the first thing that you need to do as an independent developer is you need to be able to boil down your game idea to the point where you can say, this is the secret sauce. This is the creative element that is different from what's out there right now. And this is why it's fun.
Do you have any examples of that teams that you've represented when they've come up with such a great secret sauce that you've taken?
How about Puzzle Quest?
Puzzle Quest, yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Everybody knew RPGs. Yeah. Everybody knew match 3 games. But, that wasn't the first match 3 game. There was Bejeweled and all that stuff out there ahead of it. Yeah. Okay. But it was the combination of those things and using match 3 as a mechanic for combat that was totally new, totally addictive, and totally compelling.
Yeah. Brilliant. Simple, but brilliant.
Yeah. And that's what you have to do. If you can't find that in the design you want to make, then keep looking before you keep building.
Yeah.
No, because you really do need to set yourself apart. Yeah. There's a ton of people that can put something out there that's me too.
Yeah. I mean, having made, plenty of 3D walkthroughs myself, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That secret sauce is the good phrase for it. Something that makes it stand out. It's the same with Kickstarter as well. You need something that people are going to buy into. And it can be something to do with the characters. Like one of the things we're doing is, for the first time, bring guns and bombs and brass and glass to Sherlock Holmes. So instead of Watson will say to Holmes, hey, are we going to go and solve this mystery? And Sherlock Holmes is going to say, no, we're just going to blow them all up. It's something different,
Yeah. Well, it's not unlike the difference between the Basil Rathbone treatment of Sherlock Holmes and the Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
It's you're bringing something, you're engaging the audience in a different way.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do want to emphasize that, story's important, but story's way more important in non-gaming applications than it is in gaming applications. Now, I'm not diminishing really standout great story titles like The Last of Us or Brothers or things like that. Those are really great, beautiful things when they can be done, okay? But at the end of the day, we're about interactivity, which means we're about play mechanics.
Yeah.
Okay? It's about doing something, not watching something.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference between gameplay and every other media form. Yeah. So you have to look at it in terms of the originality you're going for, in terms of the gameplay mechanics, and the way that you're engaging with that audience.
Yeah, the fun.
Yeah, the fun factor. Exactly. Because you and I, we may love RPGs, right? Even if you love RPGs, there are some of them, you pick them up and you go, this is just a slog. This is just a grind. I'm not having any fun. And there's others that you go, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that 40 times. No problem.
Yeah. Diablo was like that.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to put it down.
Yeah. 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 And for new guys trying to break into the business, there's no better place than doing exactly like that. You're interested in working in games because you love playing games, but you've played enough games to know why you love the ones you do and why you don't like the ones you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And taking that knowledge and applying it to your design sensibilities is really the key.
Yeah.
You know, but a lot of people, and another good tip that I'll pass on to people, which is you can be too enamored of your baby. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen it millions of times. I mean, you're just too close to your baby. You need to have the ability to either work with somebody external like us, okay, who can objectively look at the baby and tell you that you've missed a third ear growing out of the back of the baby's head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, or you've got to have somebody, it doesn't even have to be a biz dev firm like us. You've got to have other developers, somebody else it's not, you know, their baby, that you can listen objectively to the feedback they have. And you've got to take that feedback to heart. You can't get defensive around, you know?
But sometimes it is a thin line between the creative's vision and their sort of stubbornness that actually makes the game stand out. How do you address that thin line? Is it a compromise or a negotiation? How do you transcend that contention?
I think it depends entirely on the honesty of the creator. Okay. And their willingness to listen. Right. If they're emotionally mature and they're giving, you know, if 42 people come up to you and go, your breath stinks. Okay. You know what I mean? Right. And you say, right, I can't, you go, I can't smell it. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, you're not willing to take feedback constructively. Right. But if you're willing to listen to it and go, all right, there's something going on here. I know I'm on the right path. Let's figure out where it's falling apart. Then it's great. Okay. Because I'm not saying you should, as a creator, you shouldn't defend your vision, but you have to be willing to hear that feedback and take it on board and process why you're getting it. You know, perception is 90% of the law, right?
I suppose that if you've got that vision and you want to defend it, you've got to be able to enroll others in it as well.
Yeah. My intention is to be a really, really good guy in everything I do. But occasionally people look at me and go, gee, Ed, you're being an asshole. Okay. Now, if I know in my heart of hearts I'm trying to be a really good guy, I can get defensive when somebody says that, or I can maturely go, well, why am I coming across as an asshole? What am I doing that's facilitating that perception? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, absolutely. And so, well, if we took the idea, sorry, feel free to jump in, Nick, if I'm not in a conversation. So let's say your developers got the creative idea and got your buy-in and gets the publisher's buy-in as well, or the funder, wherever the money is coming from. What are then that's when the journey really only begins, isn't it? There are a whole bunch of pitfalls that you can fall into. There's a whole load of negotiations you need to do. I mean, there's a lot of good games that have never been finished or been marketed correctly. What's the process for dealing with that? Do you have? You must have by now.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. You're opening up a big box there. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Again, maturity of the developer and level of experience is important, because in the beginning, you know, that adherence to that creative vision, that, you know, feeling that you're the only one that really gets this product, okay, can make you difficult to work with, okay? Because as a developer, you have to be respectful of, you know, especially when the publisher's footing the whole bill, okay? If they're footing the whole bill, most of their agreements are going to say that ultimately they have creative control, okay?
Yeah.
And so there are certain places they can push the product in a direction that they feel is commercially important, okay?
Yeah.
Now, let's take the worst case scenario of that, okay? The worst case scenario of that is you have these product review groups in a large publisher that include people that don't normally play games, okay?
Yeah.
And you know, let's say you're making a flight sim, and in that flight sim, one of the targets that you have down there is a submarine, okay? And some wonk sitting in the product review group goes, wouldn't it be great if you could drive that submarine as well? Okay, this is a real world example,
Right.
I might add, okay?
Yeah.
All right. And as the developer, you have to be able to stand your ground and go, this is not a submarine simulator.
Yeah.
This is a flight simulator. Okay. And if you go down this path, you're going to give up this, and this to make this work. And it's of questionable benefit. Now, the reason I say this is because at the end of the day, yeah, the publisher, if he's paying the bills, ultimately can say, we're going to go down this path. All right. And your choices are, you know, terminating or playing along. All right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
nobody wants to hear later on a developer that accommodates every one of these requests without saying a thing. Okay. And then gets up close to the end of the project and goes, I don't have enough resources to finish, or the overall project doesn't deliver the core vision it had because too much time was spent on these boondoggles, you know, right? And nobody said boo.
Yeah.
Because everybody was just trying to get along. Yeah. So my advice to developers is this: be aware of where you sit in the ecosystem, but be realistic and real in your feedback when change requests and stuff come through. Make sure that you point out clearly the ramifications on the budget, on the schedule, on the original design vision for the game, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay?
Yeah.
And not in an obstructionist way, in a, look, if you really want to go down this path, and I don't recommend it, okay, this is what it means.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I've certainly been in that situation many, many times.
Yeah.
And is that, I suppose, is part of your service, is representing and guiding the developer through that?
That's an excellent question. Yeah, because a lot of the agencies that you see out there, okay, are only concerned up to the point of the contract. Okay. Once the contract is signed, they're on to their next thing. Okay. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of publishers, I shouldn't say a lot, some publishers have a real bias against agencies in general, is because they feel that the agency is not contributing any real value.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, one of the reasons that we have the longevity that we have is because what we do is we always act to the benefit of the project.
Yeah.
The reason that you get 7,000 titles over 35 years is because you develop repeat business, okay? Yeah. And you don't do repeat business by doing stupid things or acting to the disadvantage of a developer or a publisher,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
To win a short-term victory, a Pyrrhic victory.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You create situations where everybody has a chance to balance risk, balance reward, you know, full integrity, trying to do the right thing at all times. And none of us, you know, none of us is going to bat 1,000. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do during development, once the deal is signed, is we're there as a customer service layer for the producers on both sides. For, you know, because the producer on both sides are going to be doing most of the heavy lifting day to day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, really.
But sometimes there's things that have to get resolved. And that could be a timing of approvals, that could be feature creep issues coming in, that could be payments, whatever the case may be. We're there, we stay involved, okay, as the people that put the deal together to make sure that both sides are being fair and treating the other fairly throughout the process. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that sort of balance is sort of the optimum environment to get a successful project and make money.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, the publishers that have worked with us see that we'll take their side when their side should be taken.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you know, I never forget, first time I was in a big negotiation with Activision, and they were fully expecting me to take my client's side, and my client was in the wrong.
Yeah.
And I just held his feet to the fire and made him do the right thing. And after that, they were like, "You're not like other agents, are you?" I said, "No, I'm going to do what's right." You know, like, I'm not going to do what's right for me. I'm going to do what's right for everybody.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. Look, this is a small industry and an incestuous industry. Your reputation is everything. Okay? And that's another thing that I think is invaluable for developers to learn. Okay?
Yeah.
Is that,
Yeah.
you know, we've all made mistakes. We're all going to continue to make mistakes. But when you make a mistake, make it with integrity and transparency. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't hide
really.
anything from anybody. Play your cards open with everybody that you're in business with. You know what I mean? Ask for help when you need it. Number two, okay, their ability to execute on that vision, you see, is the second gateway. Because there's some people that are really creative, but they don't have the background or experience to execute on the vision. They can put great words on paper and great ideas on paper, but they can't execute.
Yeah.
You know,
And
so
they won't.
and
You can be a great character, but they won't talk to you if you don't have a product. You know?
yeah, and the secondary piece of it, I mean, you know, of people's ability to execute on that vision. Yes, everybody invests in people, not ideas. Okay, that's why I have friends in this business that have, you know, spent money with my developers at 8 different companies that they've worked at. You know what I mean? It's because there is a personal relationship that goes on. And when I rep somebody, there's a vetting that occurs, and people know that. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that they get the work because of what I've done. I'm saying that my recommendation adds to what they can do. Okay. But ultimately, they have to, you know, that's why we don't sign, we're not a reseller. You know, we don't resell anybody's services, because you as the buyer have to believe in who's coming to the table to give you the service. You know, so facilitating all that due diligence and getting that level of comfort where it needs to be is part of what we do as well.
I mean, one of the things that we want to do with this summit is to dig a little deeper, you know, to provide information that's not available on the internet. Hence, we're interviewing people like yourself and getting the expertise. When you talk about that vetting process, can you tell us what the nuts and bolts of that vetting process are? What should a developer be aware of? What will the developer be scrutinized through that process?
Okay, well, have you ever seen the Electronic Arts due diligence questionnaire?
Well, I mean, once I pitched something to EA, and 15 people interviewed me, asking me the same question over and over again. And I left the room thinking that I would have had an easier time in a London police station.
Yeah, well, I'm using them as an example. Okay, they're certainly not an isolated example, but the majors, okay, the EAs, the Squares, the 2Ks, Activisions, they have very extensive due diligence. If you're going to work on, I have studios that work on Call of Duty, okay, and if you're going to do work on that project, you're going to go through a pretty extensive due diligence process, okay, because information security, everything else is key, okay. So some of these due diligence questionnaires are 40 and 50 pages long. Those are the questions. Filled out, they could be 200 pages. So, like, you want to work with the big boys, you got to be prepared to document that everything a professional development studio needs to know. You've got key card access, you've got all the insurance provisions you need, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Why am I saying it this way? I'm saying it this way because almost nobody's going to walk off the street and start working with these guys. Okay? You're going to be at a certain level of maturity as a studio before they're going to pay attention to you. All right? So let's look at the rest of the world. The rest of the world, coming down to guys like Game Mill, Maximum Games, Devolver Digital, Versus Evil. These are all mid-tier publishers that their due diligence is as different from one to the next as you could imagine. They don't have these big draconian questionnaires, okay, that you got to dance through.
Yeah.
But each one has certain key points that they've experienced problems with before. Okay. And they're going to focus their due diligence efforts around those pain points. So
late delivery, for example.
Like late deliveries, okay, like people who won't take external guidance, there's different things for different ones. But you can, I'm sorry?
What's one that you've learned in your career? What are some of the mistakes you've made by not doing due diligence, maybe early in your career?
By not doing due diligence on developers?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you one that happened that took me by surprise. Okay. I had a studio. Now, they were owned by somebody who came out of Ubisoft. All right. A very senior person from there. And the studio was in Asia. Okay. And they were a large studio, like several hundred people. Okay. Well, they had good quality stuff. And I ended up arranging for EA to go in for a visit. EA became very interested in them.
Yeah.
And I arranged for them to go in for a visit. Now, my failing was this. I did not brief the owner the way I should have, okay, for what an EA visit might look like, because he came out of Ubisoft. He should have known.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But that was my mistake. But in the end, what happened was EA walked in there and was able to see projects from its competitors up on screens ask questions about them, take pictures of them, everything else, came out of there and said, we'll never work with these guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah.
So just the basics of managing your space and managing your information security when you have a visiting publisher, you know, I mean,
at least while they're there.
but still, I mean, that's the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
the whole point.
Oh, what a story.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that was, I'm not going back a great number of years. I'm going back about 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought when you said they could take photographs, I thought, oh my God, this is like in mobile phone time, you know?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, and other people, and tell you another thing is unlicensed software,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
guys thinking they can get away with unlicensed software. And it's typically people in Asia, people in Eastern Europe, you know, who basically use bootleg copies of Max and Maya and all that stuff, and end up in a development agreement and then can't produce the licenses. And then guess what? Everything gets canceled.
Wow.
That's another, you know, huge lesson learned. Look, you want to be a studio, you want to be professional, you got to be professional. You work in an intellectual property law environment.
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't respect other people's intellectual property, no one will work with you because you're not going to respect theirs.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow.
It's, you know, it seems simple stuff, but it really just, you know, it's sort of like people who use, you know, BitTorrent and think that's perfectly fine. You know, I'm not going to pay for these movies.
Yeah. Somebody's losing their royalties every time that.
Yeah.
Which is our bread and butter.
This is the world we live in. Okay. If you're a software developer and you rip off IP for whatever, I don't care what your justification is, you got no business in our industry.
Yeah. It's interesting because there are regions where, you know, it's an alien concept like Latin America to buy licenses. It's unheard of. You know, you'd see it in small to medium enterprises. It wouldn't be done, and I guess
but you're absolutely right. Okay, and I'm not saying that the U.S. culture isn't guilty of this as well, because they are. Okay, they're just less likely to do it at development studio level. But the point being is that you're coming out of whatever culture that you're in, and you're entering into our culture. Our culture is the culture of professional game development.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our culture is an industry that by 2022 will have a larger gross than the gross domestic product of 150 countries in the world, according to DigiCapital on Friday.
Wow.
Okay.
So there's still some money to be made then?
A little bit, yeah. You know, and guys, if I come across as preachy, I don't mean to.
No, it's fine. Good.
Okay. All right.
But, you know, on the developer side, it's difficult for a veteran developer to be able to afford the licenses for tools like Maya. You know, they do cost thousands of dollars, territories.
You know, the reality of it is this, okay? My dad was a painter, all right? He was a union painter. There are people that are licensed electricians and licensed plumbers and all that stuff. And there's people that are unlicensed, okay? If you're going to work in a trade, then you need to pay the fees associated with working in that trade, okay? If you don't have the ability to do that, you shouldn't be in the business. Go somewhere else, pursue another trade that you can do so legally until such time as you put enough of capital aside to do what it is you want to do legally.
Yeah.
made a good point,
Right.
Ed, which is, you know, these are all the costs that need to be factored into a budget, in an indie budget at the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, if you start to cut corners, there are going to be consequences.
And even general liability insurance. They got guys working, you know, out of places with, you know, sweat equity and everything else, right? And then you want to go sign a publisher contract. First thing the publisher contract wants to see, one of the things is general liability, professional liability. Show me your policy. Make me an additional insured. Okay. Regardless of whether you believe in that process or not, it's a process that has to be dealt with.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you have to have, in the UK, you have to have it a limited company, you know.
Ed, just while we're on this kind of red flags and things that people do that are really unappealing, are there any other things you can think of?
You really want all my dirt, don't you?
We want all of the joy as well, you know.
Well, it's just great, you know, let's get them all out, you know.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest ones is people hiding stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. It's because they're afraid of the consequences and they know something is wrong, but they're not raising their hand. Okay. You know, I hate to say that in my, you know, 38 years, probably less than 10 times, okay, but somewhere in that range, okay, I've had situations where a development studio that we represented was not totally forthcoming about some problems they were having. And that caused these problems to ball up and get worse. And by the time they did come to light, it was nearly insurmountable for everybody. Okay. And it totally could have been avoided. But they were so afraid that something, you know, was going to pull the plug on them that they lied and cheated, you know what I mean? And to try and keep their cash flow going, because they weren't willing to just stand up to their partner who was helping them and say, I got this problem and I don't know how to solve it.
Yeah.
And had they done that, it would have been history pretty quick. And everybody would have appreciated the transparency and honesty. You know, you see on my website, fairness, integrity, and trust, right? You got to be fair with other people. You got to do your stuff with integrity, which means you got to tell the truth, even when the truth hurts. Okay. And you got to be transparent.
Yeah.
Nice. And on the flip side,
Great way to be.
It's the only way to be. It's the way that everybody wants to be treated.
Yeah, it's the way everybody wants to be, I believe.
Yeah, I think most people do, but they're just afraid. Some of them are afraid. You know? Not to say that there aren't some bad actors in the world, because there are. There are cheats out there. Okay? But the wonderful thing about our business is once you figure them out, they don't stay there for long. Because it is a small and incestuous business, and people go, oh, that guy? No, we ain't touching him. Because we all do talk to one another, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And on the flip side, Ed, what are the things that just make you really have trust and want to work with someone?
Oh, wow. That's, you know, it's so much the chemistry. Okay. It's so much. There are guys like Steve Faulkner. Okay. Steve and I have worked together for, God, almost 20 years now. Okay. And he's the creator of Puzzle Quest. All right. And Steve is the most decent, soft-spoken, not egotistical, you know, straight up human being. He's one of those guys that it's hard not to love. Okay. And we've had a rapport from the beginning where we could say anything to each other. Okay. He understands what his limitations are. He'll tell you, he'll be like, if I say it's 14 months, just add 2 months.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we figured that out together. Like, he's going to be 2 months beyond what he says because he's a perfectionist and he wants to get it right. Okay. So you just plan for it going in and you know. Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, what do we all want out of life? We want recognition for a job well done. Okay. We want a little bit of gratitude, you know, just the normal human rewards of what we do, right? And good client relationships, that exchange goes on in both directions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
do
you wanna have a
something
fun
to help
experience.
them. They're appreciative. They recognize it for what it is. You know what I mean? They go, man, I learned from that. Thank you. That's all I need.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right? And and clients still teach us stuff too. You know? And that's cool. That's great. Because everybody, it's like, look, it's like raising kids, okay?
What sort of stuff have you
Every
learned
kid is
recently?
different. Every kid is different. There is no set pattern. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
So I'm just wondering what you said. You know, clients are still teaching you stuff. I just wondered what you learned recently.
Stuff about free to play, actually. You know, some of the compulsion loop mechanics and stuff. I have a client, Octagon, in Brazil, and that's what they specialize in. And they've taken over live ops for 505 and D3P and others. And, you know, they are getting into some of the machine learning aspects of it and everything.
Right.
And it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
So
very
being able to take that technical knowledge, bring it back into the sales arena, build value propositions around it, and introduce it to new people, that's cool.
Yeah.
You know, I like that's one of the big things that's really cool about our industry in general is it's not static. Okay. It's not, we went through all those platform changes. We did there is a commonality, okay, that can carry over in the experience level, but there's always new challenges. There's always new things. It's a different day every day, you know, and each product brings up different things. And that keeps it fresh. That keeps it exciting.
Yeah, I mean, look at the actual concept of downloading a game. You know, in the 90s, it was just an idea, and you know, there were huge inventory costs. You know, you couldn't, as an independent developer, it was very hard to release a game because you'd need to pay Nintendo $500,000 for the cartridges before you start, and you know, the public, of course, helped by taking all the inventory risk, but at the same time, as a developer, you didn't have the freedom to have direct access to your audience on a daily basis.
Yeah. Oh, the where we're at today is a renaissance, okay, for access to consumers and everything. But the big challenges that remain are marketing and exposure, okay, and the fact that there are so little barriers to entry, it does make it harder for everybody to make money. And I think as an ecosystem, we need to get together and we need to make a tier breakdown. You know what I mean? We need to kind of mature studios up through that process and provide them with avenues, you know, that are different for, you know, they're still consumers, but this is this level, this is this level, and this is this level. Okay. I think no worries.
Nice. Yeah. So listen, about the pitching, can we put ourselves in the minds of like a number of different groups? So no name indie developing a really cool creative game that has some potential, kind of an indie that's developed a couple of games, and then a kind of more sophisticated studio? Like,
Okay.
how would the pitching approaches work for those different categories?
Okay, so for the first guy, he hasn't got a track record. Okay. So he's really got to lean into why is it compelling? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got to hook that first gate really, really hard. All right. Which is, you know, why do people want to play this game? Okay. What's going to make it more fun? Now, I can tell you that absent a demo, he's got a really hard road to hoe. Okay. He's going to have a demo which shows this mechanic that's cool.
Okay.
All right. Because he's got no other credibility for having delivered anything. Otherwise, he might as well be, you know, a guy at a Starbucks with I got an idea for a game, you know, which I'm sure you've heard that kind of stuff too, you know.
That's how I started.
Yeah, it's funny. It happens everywhere. So he's got to sink that first hook really hard. Okay. And then remember, the second two behind that are, does he have the means to execute on that vision? And what's the price? Okay. Yeah. So those are the three gateways. If he can sink the first one, he's going to have to really inspire confidence on the second one. Okay. But the amount of confidence he has to inspire is inversely proportional to the cost of the third one. So in other words, if somebody says, this is really cool, and you only need 50 grand to do it, okay, it's a lower risk bet. All right. So, okay, maybe you haven't done anything remotely like this before, but 50 grand's not a big bet for me to make. And I can gate that 3 times en route to the full amount. You know, show me this, show me this, show me this.
Yeah.
All right. So, but if you go up into the bigger numbers, then you really are going to have a plan of how to segment that into much smaller bite-sized chunks that people can feel comfortable with. Okay.
Milestones.
You know, milestones. Okay. But even the milestone right after this one, whatever you're showing as your demo, there's probably 2 or 3 critical gateway paths that have to be done to demonstrate the rest of the stuff. Okay. So you're going to want those next 2 milestones to really focus on delivering those mechanics, right? And proving those mechanics. And you want to do those 2 milestones as cheaply as possible. Okay. So maybe you do need $500,000, but you can get those 2 milestones done for 75. Okay. So you're showing in the way you present your pitch that you're conscious of where you are in the ecosystem, what the publisher's concerns are going to be, how you plan to mitigate those concerns, how you plan to make it palatable to him. Okay. That's really the key for the guy who's coming for the first time.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you said your second one is a guy that's, give me the parameters around the second one so I keep him separate from the third.
Look, 2 or 3 games.
Can I just have an in-between question there?
Sure. Yeah.
One. Are you also able to negotiate some parameters on behalf of the developer? So when the developer has to work very hard to get through those milestones that you talked about there. When the developer works that hard, sometimes they can have the experience that then the publisher doesn't take the title as seriously as they might, and doesn't put the marketing clout behind it that they could. Are you also able to build in those kind of parameters so we'll satisfy that gate, beyond your expectations, but you have to promise that you're going to spend X on marketing? Is that something that can be integrated in?
I think it really depends on the title. Okay. I mean, generally publishers will commit to 20% of the sales in market being reinvested in marketing. Okay, which is not the same as a hard dollar commitment. It's a percentage commitment.
But even, I mean, to get those initial sales, it will need some sort of marketing in the first place. Huh?
It depends. Okay, I mean, like really, when you look at it today, what platform are you going out on? Okay, you have to think, what platform are you going out on? How do you best reach those guys? You know, is it an influencer campaign? Is it a Twitch thing? You know, so I mean, the short answer to your question is yes, you can address those kinds of things in the agreement. You can also address things like what happens if the guy goes through the 2 gateways and then wants to back off. But you have a more advanced demo now, which still has a commercial life somewhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like you have to cover all those contingencies in as part of the process.
So are you saying then that if the publisher makes it very tight to jump through those milestones, that you're able to back out from those milestones with your own content?
I'm saying that if the publisher, let's say that, you know, there's a gateway, okay? Like he agrees to fund the first 2 miles. You know how it is. They can cancel at any time. Okay. What I would not want to do is have a situation where we bring in a mature demo, we turn in the first milestone, he rejects the milestone, cancels, then somehow owns the property. You see, and can take it somewhere else. So that's why I'm saying you have to have the means to extricate if he's canceling prior to actual release of the property. You provide for what happens at that point. Who has what? Are there any payback rights? Any of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, Ed, that's vital. You know, you can, it's a really great way to protect your developer.
Yeah, you have to think through all the ramifications.
Yeah.
Okay, and you have to do it fairly. Okay, you can't have a situation, and your developer needs to understand this as well, where the guy plows, you know, 400 to 500,000 into the title, okay, and then he has a problem as a publisher, okay, and you know can't go forward for whatever reason. You can't presume at that point you get to walk with 400,000 and no payback rights. You know what I mean? Like the guy has ownership of your title, maybe not the intellectual property that underlies it, but he's invested in your title. So he should be treated fairly as well. You know?
Yeah. Sorry, Nick.
And you can't do that stuff in a way that makes it impossible for other third parties, publishers, to pick up the title either. Because then it doesn't help anybody.
No, sure.
And I guess having an agent or having someone who's got your back and has got the experience to negotiate with the publishers and really protect your asset is key.
Well, I think that, I'm of the school of thought that says, I don't care how long you've been a developer inside the business. Okay, you could be a developer for 30 years, but I'll guarantee it's just like Simon earlier. Simon says, I've done 65 titles. Okay, I've done 7,000. All right, I didn't develop all 7,000, but I cut the deals on the 7,000. All right, so no matter how long you've been in the business, okay, I think that every studio benefits from professional representation, okay, whether it's via a legal counsel by themselves or an agent. I personally think that some legal counsels are adept at negotiating and others are really not. They're just good at the legal language.
Yeah.
You know, but the key is you want to have a good negotiator on your side and one that is not negotiating from a position of, you know, one guy wins and the other guy loses. Because anybody that approaches it with that philosophy is damaging to you in the end.
What you really need is someone to negotiate that has those nuances, that knows to put those clauses in the contract from the experience of it having gone wrong a few times in the past. You know?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that happens is omissions. Things that are silent, they don't exist in there.
Not covered, and then you're like,
yeah, and then people go, well, what about this? Well, there's a contract silent on that.
What other issues have you had in contracts that, things that haven't been included?
Sequel and derivative rights, the way they're handled, non-competition clauses are really important. I mean, sometimes those are written. All right, imagine this: you're a racing developer, okay, and there's a non-competition clause that says essentially that you won't develop any game that's directly competitive with this game for 2 years after the release of this game. All right, so my question is, what's directly competitive? Okay, one would say if it's a racing game, it could be competitive. So essentially, what have you done, Mr. Developer? You just put yourself out of business because you can't develop anything for 2 years after the release of this game that has to do with your core expertise. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it surprises me how much people gloss over the language of the agreement. Okay. They literally go into the agreement. They look to see that the royalties are there. Oh, he said 30%. Is it 30%? Okay.
yeah.
Now, and he said the advance was this, and is it that? And that's the extent of their freaking intelligent reading. Okay.
Wow.
It's like, come on, dude.
Yeah.
Like, all right.
Yeah.
Simon, I'm going to give you a 30% royalty. Okay.
Yeah.
How do you change that into a dollar figure in your head?
Well, yeah. I mean, when I think of it as like direct 30 cents, right? Of the dollar.
Yeah. But it ain't.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
You got to look at what's the definition of net revenues? What all can come off of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
how are they doing recoupment? Are you recouping at your royalty rate? Are you recouping off net? What it's like.
You know what happened to me because of this? Like, I won't name any names, but one of the big boys didn't pay my royalties. In the contract, they were able to offset my royalties on the next round of inventory.
Yeah. Yep.
So they gave it all to Nintendo and said, well, we're within our rights to do that until, the product runs down.
Yeah. So basically, it's sort of like the other thing is, here's a classic one. Cross collateralization.
Oh,
okay?
No, don't.
All right. So, Nicola, here's how that works.
Yeah, please explain.
Cross collateralization says, I want to not just develop one game with you. I want to develop multiple games with you. All right. And we're going to cross collateralize the royalties on all of them. So what that means is, let's say you turn out a hit game. Okay. And I would be normally owing you royalties, but because I'm giving you additional development advances to make the next game and I'm cross collateralizing with this game, essentially I'm recovering your royalties for myself. So you've become an indentured servant. Okay.
Oh, so they're taking.
You're actually making new games off the royalties I would have given you for me for free.
Ooh.
And I get additional ways to make money.
Oh, they're taking the piss.
All right. I mean, like there's a wealth of this kind of crap out there. And quite honestly, until very recently, most of the development agreements in this world have been stacked against developers. Not as bad as Hollywood stacks, but still bad. Okay. And we're entering a phase now where things are changing.
Yeah.